Hello everyone, my name is Barbara and I would like to welcome you all to our latest Knowledge webinar episode. This week, MODO for Automotive Rapid Concept Design Studios. MODO has become an application capable of many things, as you know. In this presentation, we will show the power of the unique tools that will allow designers to create 3D models of concept designs without the baggage of traditional modeling paradigms. That one. Today's presenter, Kevin Ketchum. Kevin Ketchum is a new MODO Creative Specialist at the Foundry. He has been involved in the transportation concept design, VR, and image creation for nearly 18 years. Prior to joining the Foundry, Kevin has worked in automotive design concept design studios. He has produced work for a variety of high-profile brands, including Ford, General Motors, Hyundai, Kia, Chrysler, Apple, Motorola, Whirlpool, Nike, and many others. Wow, what a pedigree. Kevin has also produced training courses and content while delivering on-site training to a variety of design clients. He is also adjunct faculty at the College of Creative Studies in Detroit, Michigan. Great. Knowledge is one of the largest online stores for design software, and we offer huge assortments of software solutions that cater to virtually every designer's need for whoever would like to then rush and get MODO right away after the presentation. And for more daily software news and limited time promotions, pay a visit to the Knowledge blog and follow us on Facebook, Google+, and Twitter. Coming up next week, Fusion 360, your CAD tool doesn't have to get in the way of great product design. Last but not least, today's webinar is free and is being recorded live. So if you want to rewatch this or any webinar episode in our collection, head on over to Knowledge's YouTube or Vimeo channels and subscribe as well. And now, without further ado, I would like to make Kevin the presenter, and so let's get this show started for real.
Excellent.
There you go, Kevin.
Can you see my screen okay?
Yes. Showtime.
Excellent. Well, excellent. Well, hey, welcome everyone, morning, noon, and night, and all of the different geographies. Welcome. As mentioned, I've been doing a lot of creative stuff, visualization, all circulating around the automotive space for quite a while, and I'm pretty excited about to show what I've learned about MODO in the last, say, 60 days since I joined the Foundry, and how it all pertains to automotive and concept modeling. For those of you that don't know about the Foundry, they have 20+ years in visualization and effects and games specialty, and they have a very solid background in the creative space, so for creating games and characters and meat-based things. But how do polygon modeling apply to more of a production type experience or environment? And by the way, this is live, so this isn't pre-recorded. So if you hear a dog in the background or a window break, it's live. So we'll roll with it, not to scare anybody away. Let me just say a few things about what this webinar is about. This webinar is about how to capture the sketch of an automotive designer, and kind of what the workflow would be, how you would generate forms using MODO, how we can start with maybe just using 2D sketches, also maybe working with scan data from like a GOM ATOS scanner, and then also how to, at the end of it, maybe do some rendering, all inside of MODO. What I would like to present is some ideas of maybe you're in a studio and you've been asked to scare your design manager, and so let's say we've got a sketch like this that he says, we like this idea, and maybe you're working on the next Gran Turismo proposal, or your studio is going to compete in some Le Mans racer, and so you've been given a sketch that looks something like this. How do you attack or approach something like this? Or something a little more conservative, more conservative form factor, such as something like this. By the way, I'd like to say thanks to Jason Dabble at Linkage for providing a couple of little sketches here, and also Andy Brown with the Foundry, and worked together to put together what you're going to see today. So moving forward here, why MODO? why would MODO be the tool that you might consider using, or maybe you're already using and would like to take it to the next level. What I found out in my experience, and I'm just very excited about what the tools can do, it allows you to crystallize an idea in a very short amount of time. My background being in using a very technical and very precise and fantastic CAD tool in the last quite a while, it got very technical and kind of took some of the fun out of creating ideas and crystallizing your concepts. The ability to speedily capture that idea and be able to tell a story and selling that idea all in one package was very, very intriguing to me. And I have to show you a little image here. We're going to walk through how to create this model today, and just as a little teaser. But here's some other images that you'll see how we created using MODO and the model quality. But I need to talk about this model, this image that you're seeing on screen. This was my very first MODO model, and while learning the software, while creating the surfaces, this is a day and a half's worth of work. And for me to be able to create the shapes, have it all filleted, and be able to tell a story and present it in less than a day and a half was very exciting to me. Again, less than two days of using the tool and capturing the idea. And so yes, it's a little rough around the edges, but it was my very first MODO model, but I was very excited about the output that I could capture with it. So let's jump into MODO, and to go back to the concept sketch there. This is kind of what we're going to be starting out with here, this sketch, and how do we arrive at this. And sometimes in most design studios, you get what's called kind of muscle memory. You kind of draw the same shapes, you draw the same volumes, you draw the same silhouettes. And one of the things I thought was pretty exciting about MODO was the ability to kind of create shapes that were non-traditional, to kind of get me started, or to kind of basically create a new form factor and start something completely different that I'd never done before. So instead of just starting out with a package and a traditional sculpting methodology working from scan, I said, wow, what can MODO do? And for those of you who've never launched MODO before, this little greetings screen comes up to you, and I just want to show a couple of little things here that I found very interesting for those of you that are converting or using another package or want to get started. There's some quick navigation hotkeys that you can set right away when you jump into MODO. So if you're already using another polygon modeling tool and you want to try to test out MODO, or really just take it on full blast, you can do that here. Set those hotkeys that you're already used to. And also this little interactive showcase. If we want to render, this is a great little tutorial for those that want to get started. This is all in the default installation, no plugins or anything like that. It'll load a demo scene, show you how to do everything, and run through little movies, and you have everything on screen. So nice, coachable, hand-holding experience when you first get in. Another thing I want to mention is that there's a deep dive and a massive community of Luxology MODO hardcore users. So that's a very, very exciting thing to know about. And then the one thing I want to point out here is the Moto Training it's all here, and you can access all of these tutorials, which is a lot of fun. But let's get started here. One of the cool little things here that most of you might know this gentleman. His name is Scott Robertson, and teaches at Art Center College of Design in Pasadena, California. I would say one of the kind of, I'd say the guy who's up and coming to be the next Sid Mead. You can load his whole model and get started for new users. I've never created anything to kind of give you some of that instant gratification and feedback, and it's a lot of fun. So just kind of keep that in mind, that you can use MODO with a seed file to get you started. So a lot of sample files are available and a massive user community. So I'm looking at MODO here, and I just want to kind of talk a little bit what you're seeing real quick. You're seeing just kind of our workspace, and this little grid line here is something called the Workplane, and you'll see how that kind of comes into play and how it really helps you to model. So I'm going to load a file here, and I will start this file using one of my presets or ones that I've already started here. I'll go ahead and say File Open and launch my little file here on my desktop. And we'll launch it right here, and it's called Speedforms. And I want to just kind of focus on this here and a little shading here, just kind of show you what we have. In real time, we have a little shape here that's being ray traced and rendered. But what I'd like to actually show you is kind of give you a model that kind of gives you some ideas about form generation and how easy it is to create something like this and to take it to the next level. So this isn't very exciting initially to look at, but I want to just show you where you can take something like this or how to start something like this. And so let me just show you another sample here of these little speed forms that I started to create in Sculpt. And using Pixar subdivisional surfaces, I'll turn off this other layer here. We can see this model. I'll toggle off my little wireframe here and kind of look at this shape. Now, this kind of shape can be a lot of things. It can be very inspirational for form generation. When I saw this shape, when I started sculpting it, I was like, I could see some tires or wheels or maybe a driver, some sort of a cockpit or canopy to sit inside of this thing. So how do you create shapes like this? And it can be very organic or have a lot of tension. So I'll toggle on my wireframe and maybe just play with this just a little bit to kind of give you an idea what I'm talking about. Once you've created a shape, and I'll show you how to create a shape, the really fun thing about polygons is it doesn't care about edge boundaries. You can just grab some shapes and start to sculpt. I'm using my right mouse button here, and I can just grab everything in screen here and just start to morph or kind of warp this and tease this whole shape into tease this whole thing into a new volume altogether. So I can just notice how it's just grabbing the tail there, or I can increase this whole thing and move everything together and to start to kind of tease these shapes into something that I couldn't normally imagine before. So, you know, give it a little more tension, maybe pull this thing out a little bit, line it up to maybe fit over the package. So these are just some fast ideation, I'll call them seed files that give me form factors that I wouldn't normally see or use. And if I had to sketch something like this out of the gate, I normally wouldn't create something like this. I'm going to switch to another sample here just to kind of show you, again, the idea of this kind of seed file generation. How do you create these shapes? They look like 3D sculptures for sure, but once you imagine a driver, a package, you know, some sort of criteria around this thing, you can start to morph and to modify this shape. So I'll show you another one here that I started, and I'll show you how I created this. So I was starting really simple here. And MODO, if you're not used to using polygon modeling, and probably most of you on the call today and in the webinar are, we have only 3 things to worry about: a face, a vertex in the corner, and an edge. That's as simple as it gets, and that's all you really need to manage. So I'm going to go ahead and start sculpting on this thing a little bit and show you how easy it is to do. So you can cycle through the different kinds of selections by using 1, 2, 3 on your keypad, or you can just use your spacebar to be able to select pieces of geometry quickly. So I'll select this, and I have symmetry turned on. This isn't a tutorial, but I do want to show you how fun this can be. I'm going to just kind of scrub and add as much information as I need on the fly. Maybe I'll put one more in there, because you don't want too much when you're first getting started. And I'm going to use like a selection tool like you would in Photoshop. I'll cycle through here, grab some of this, and move my geometry around a little bit, and kind of maybe create a little shape here that comes out in the front, and maybe along this edge loop here. So this is edge loops allows you to be able to, if you double click along an edge loop here, we can sculpt and move and modify, translate, scale, and rotate. But another nice thing about the Pixar subdivision of surfaces is that you can do edge weighting. And what do I mean by that? So if I toggle off the Pixar subdivision surfaces, you see the cage. This is cage mode, right? Nothing fancy here. But when I use Shift and Tab, I can get to the Pixar subdivisional surfaces. And what's nice about this is that I can do edge weighting with this, and all of this can be weighted, and I can add some tension to the edge of this model by just hitting Shift W, and I can add some creasing without adding edge loops everywhere. All right, and then I can just kind of drop the tool and maybe subdivide this a little bit. So I'll select this whole model, or I just let's go ahead and subdivide this again. And I can start to do some more creasing or adding more shapes, but let's do some interesting thing here. So I'll just grab these couple of edges here, and I want to say, let's make this kind of a wheel. And I can maybe pull this out a little bit. Excuse me. Let's move this out into 3D space here. And I can bevel this a little bit and kind of grab that and bevel it one more time. And right now I'm trying to just kind of imagine this as if it were, you know, maybe an axle was coming out through here. So just quickly I can grab it and modify and morph these shapes quickly to get ideas to get started. And I'll turn symmetry back on. Looks like I turned off symmetry, but hey, I'm not gonna, it's polygons. I can delete 1/2 and just mirror it right over. That's not a problem. So I'll just grab these couple of surfaces here, or I'll grab this, these two, and I'll delete those. And then maybe I'll grab 2 up here, and I'll delete those. And I'll just go ahead and select around this edge here. I'll grab this shape here, and I'll grab this little shape here. Excuse me, let's do it one more time. So I can paint select, which is kind of fun. I can just kind of drag around there and select using your control key. You can deselect, which is just like in Photoshop, you know, add and drop from the selections pretty easily. Okay, around this bottom side here. Let's turn those off. All right, so I've kind of got those eyes selected. I wasn't thinking that they were eyes, but they kind of look like eyes now. So I'll just turn that all off in there. I don't want that selected at all. And I'll say bridge. Do it one more time. I think I'm going to delete the kind of this little skeleton that's inside here, so I'll turn this whole thing off. All right, so let's go ahead and pick this edge loop, and I'll pick this edge loop here. Just deselect that one. All right, having some fun. I'm okay with it though. So I'm going to select that, and I'll just paint select these here, no problem. So basically, I'm just trying to pick an adjacent side that I want to grow a shape to. So with symmetry turned on, I'm going to come over to my polygons and say bridge. And again, just kind of like I did in the beginning there. Now I'm creating these little support structures, and as a scrub, these are all editable. I can add as much information as I need or don't need. And I'm going to grab this, maybe grab this little edge loop along the edge on both sides, and do some weighting there. So Shift W, grab some creasing, add some weight to that, and I can chase this along to be a little more tension in the shapes and kind of get those creases. Instead of just having a hot, heated piece of cheese, I can have a surface that actually has some sculpture to it and tension. Let's just go ahead and bring this form along this edge. All right, and again, Shift W to add some creasing. So this is how I can play. I can play with the soft and masculine shapes all by using this edge weighting. I'll toggle off the wireframe real quick and just kind of look at this real quick and drop the selection. I've got a couple of different shading modes to help me evaluate the surface, so I can kind of just toggle in between those shapes and kind of course, look at this in kind of a raycast real-time mode. And I can toggle on just fast little ray tracing mode here, so just let this solve. And I can go, you know, super high level, but right now I'm just going to let it just kind of solve, and I can kind of see what the shapes are doing. Again, very inspirational, trying to find these forms and shapes. Right, so that's one of the things I like about Modo, is that you can just create shapes pretty quick, and I'll toggle this back to default. So just to make a new shape real quick, I'll toggle off these other forms. So to get started, here's how I did that. I turned on symmetry. We got polygons here, and I'm going to say, let's go ahead and sculpt out some shape here. I got symmetry again turned on, and I'm going across the x-axis. So just to click a shape here, and just to start making a form, go to top view here. And these are all editable. They all have history. I can move these little shapes around a little bit. Sometimes they get a little scary, but don't be afraid. As far as by symmetry here, let's go ahead and make a shape that comes down. So speed form and organic, and move this, come back around here. So looking at a structure that can be strong and lightweight, but very inspirational. So that's one of the tools I really like here. So this is this little cap right here. So solid sketch using bilateral symmetry, which is a lot of fun. So that's how I created a lot of these earlier shapes here that you saw in the first section of the kind of sketch demo. So I really like this, and then using the T key to toggle, using the T key to kind of torture. It's called tweak, but I call it torture. So right mouse clicking and dragging, you can do this this T key and just kind of move your shapes interactively, depending on how big that kind of force field is around your shapes, to be able to stretch and kind of get around a criteria package, which I find very inspirational. And of course, you can save these out to if you're using a CAD package, maybe like Alias or something, you can save this out as a NURBS model. Let's go ahead and close the scene, and I'll load a new scene here. All right, so let's talk about and show how to kind of do two different types of modeling. I've been asked, and I've been doing a lot of asking, how to create forms and shapes based on either just a 2D sketch. And so a 2D sketch kind of when you have nothing really to work from. And I'm going to say that we've got a package here. We've got a criteria package that we're going to load. And I've kind of got an Oscar here. I'm going to switch over. So these are my little flyout menus. If you hit your control and space bar, you've got your little flyout menus here, so I can jump and check my different orthographic views if you need to. So this is my little package data, and I like to kind of like get an idea how big is this thing I'm actually working on. So I'll shift and marquee menu. So sort of like a Photoshop lasso selection. So just hold your shift and middle mouse click and grab those things. But let's kind of be a little more real here and dimensions. And I'm going to switch over to a perspective view so I can kind of see, okay, this is a realistic proportion, and this is the wheelbase that I'm working with. I've got a kind of a 95th percentile Oscar with some vision, upward and downward vision angles, some approach and departure angles. So this is typically what I would get from the studio engineer, and you know, kind of give me the Oscar, how wide he is, and his H point and his heel point. And we're going to use this as our base to start to develop these forms. So I'll drop my selection and I'll toggle off my dimension tool. And so let's just open up this working file. So in order for me to kind of show this play-by-play, we felt it would be good to create basically a stop-motion animation to show every frame here. So to be able just to create a cube here and drop it into the scene. Next, to subdivide the cube in a couple of different ways, and you don't need to be too specific about how many sections that you need. And so this is pretty cool here. Let me just show you this little section here. This is called fall-offs, and this is one of the things that kind of really opened my eyes about the power of Moto. Using something called a linear fall-off, it's pretty awesome. If I take a shape here, excuse me, I'm still using a creation mode here. So if I turn on my linear fall off, and what is a fall off? Basically, just think about like a force field. I know it's very Star Wars like, trademarked and registered. Sorry about that. But let me go ahead and move this thing, and I can let me explain a little bit about the fall off. The fall off basically says, here's your magnitude of influence on your polygons. Yes, these are verts. Yes, these are edges. Yes, these are polygon faces. But by using fall-offs, I don't have to touch one of them. I can use this sort of like a lattice rig, but I can control where the influence is over this model, and I can move my manipulator. I can move the lattice of like what gets influenced, and it's very, very powerful. And there's several different styles of manipulators, of fall-offs that we can use. I can also rotate this. So this is being rotated in the front. But I never had to touch one polygon, never had to touch one vert or one edge. So using fall-offs, that's how we kind of created this coffin shape. That's probably not the best shape to relate it to when you're designing a car. But and doing the same thing in the side view, using the fall-offs to kind of get most of what we want, or I can switch to kind of this edge mode here. Let's just kind of using kind of Photoshop style selection here. I just middle mouse key and can tweak this whole thing to kind of get the shape that I want. I can scale it, all those sorts of things. Maybe I can scrub this together and sculpt that. Again, I'm just going to go ahead and use a fall off again. So I'll say fall off, linear, and I'll just say from like maybe this point upward, let's go ahead and actually I got a better idea. Let's do this. I've been known to have only 1 or 2 of those per year, so let's do this. Let's actually say centric and on the start and have a nice little fall off or an ease in. So excuse me, let's ease out. Now you'll notice that the fall offs, it's full strength here and then slowly falls off to here. So now when I do a move here, this is pretty slick. And actually let's reverse that whole thing. Now when I do the adjust the power, it kind of locks the front and rear. Let me make sure this is fully enveloped here. And so hardly any influence on the front and rear, but all the impact is on the center of the model. So very helpful. I didn't have to move a bunch of CVs. I didn't have to move a bunch of edges. Let's keep moving here. So after I get the volume and the shape defined, again, just adding edge loops, so I can just quickly come here to a polygon and say, excuse me, an edge, and just add an edge loop with symmetry turned on. I can just grab this little row here, holding Shift key. I can keep adding information as I need. And then just switching over to like a face mode here, and I can start to, kind of manipulate this over time. And we'll continue on the moving here. So basically, I grabbed those faces and did an extrude, moving through the model. Nothing too fancy here. Again, we're trying to be fairly respectful of the package, and so that our ideas and our concepts might be chosen because we've baked in some feasibility here. On the side here, basically, we just selected the edges and did a extrude here on the edge, inserted an edge loop, and did an extrude here. So just selected a couple of faces and did a bevel, and just said, let's go ahead and move that out. Right. So that's kind of how we got that. Actually, let's bevel it one more time, and then move this out. So that's kind of how we got this. And then you can say respect the normal of the surface, or just kind of move in the UV, whatever. Okay, so moving on here, let's go ahead and kind of walk through this. So again, kind of doing that, making a round shape on the end of a polygon, which is pretty cool to do, using deform and this one called radial. So if you select a bunch of polygons, and you can select the edges and say make them radial. So up around the front here, did a, let's go pop back here. So from here, selected a couple of edges here, and then just said bevel, and then drag. And you can see that I can create some areas that I can start to create a nice little feature that can either be blistered, so I can come here to the edge and say add a loop, and I'm just going to select right in this little area right here. And now that gives me a four-sided surface, 1, 2, 3, 4. And when I drop the tool, I can select these edges here, and then just go ahead and use something called like an action center. Action centers are interesting because they're sort of like a pivot point in other applications, but you can say, based on the selection, go ahead and do the move. So it's not moving to the normal of the UV world, it's moving to the relevant to the surface normal. So I can kind of do something like that. So that's kind of how we create those, and we have a nice little four-sided shape there. And if I start to subdivide, this, so I can, let's try this again. So I can start to get a nice little blister there if I need to go that high, but in this case I'm trying to keep it as light as possible. And if I shift tab, I can see the Pixar subdivision surfaces. I think I've said that enough times this presentation, so I won't say it again. Let's look at this shape here, and I can really start to look at this and get a feel, evaluate what's happening with the surface, and kind of review it with the designer, or maybe I'm the designer and I'm liking what I'm seeing. So continuing on through the model, I'll turn off this one here. So again, just another progression, and starting to add some detail information around the back end, because the sketch was kind of giving me that, the sketch was kind of giving me some information on the back that needed some of this import kind of, you know, F1 vertical exhaust sort of look and feel. So again, just very sculptural, but trying to be pretty realistic to the package. So let me toggle back to Moto here as we move through. So again, growing faces using extrude, and this is that cool little function I was just mentioning a little bit earlier under deform. It's a pretty cool one to use radial, make it this surface radial, and like it a lot. Next step, adding some more detail. I think you kind of get the idea, but over time here, starting to, this is box modeling, right? So just kind of adding details where I need them, and trying to get buy-off and a discussable model before lunch, or you know, if I've been given direction after lunch, and we've been modeling away, and before the evening, we can say, why don't you chew on this, or send it off to do a couple of renders. So really liking that, and just kind of through the progression, progressing through the model, hitting sub D, excuse me, softening it again. Then, if you hit Tab key, you see the cage mode, and I recommend for anybody that's on the call to use your cage mode to do most of your alignment of your structure. And another thing I want to mention here is, this is kind of a little side street here, but if you go to System Preferences and you use your flatness of perspective, let's make that like 200. This is similar to kind of like not quite an orthographic view, but I'm in a perspective window, and I can kind of look at the flow of my topology, and I can use my pen tool to do some kind of sliding. Excuse me. The whole thing moved. By the way, if I right mouse click and get the size of my tweak tool way down, because you can kind of see that it's massive. So I'm just going to turn my range. So this is the element fall off. I'm going to make this back to 0. So I'll just type that back to 0. And then yeah. So you know, every model that gets created in NURBS, there's a lot of CV tweaking, and if you look at this Polygon workflow, it's very similar to kind of a CV workflow, where you're kind of saying, okay, let's look at the splay of the topology and make sure that they make sense as far as how they flow. Just kind of look at the flow, and I call it like the real estate in between. So just use that. So using the preferences, system preferences, and I just use the flatness of perspective. I take that to like 500 when I'm actually doing all of my initial getting things lined up in the scene. Or you can use Control Spacebar to access the flyout menus to do kind of more of an orthographic analyzing everything. Actually, let's go back here to this front view. This is kind of fun. Let's go ahead and while we're here, I'm going to subdivide this once, and I'm going to use that fall off again. This time I'll use cylindrical and just kind of click and drag. Actually, let's do let's do that again. So I'll subdivide this real quick, and using fall offs, you don't have to manage a bunch of CV cats. So I just want to really point out how awesome this is. So I'm just going to click and drag this here and maybe move this over. I meant to do it from the origin here. So full strength, and then a fall off towards the edge, and then using my move here, and I'll just kind of pull that down just a little bit. I probably should go the other way, right? So notice how I've got when nothing is selected on screen, somehow everything is selected, because basically the layer, the container that your geometry is inside of is what's being acted upon. So just kind of keep that in mind. I think I'm going to take a different approach for this to get that greenhouse down. I'm going to say I'll use linear again, and this time I'm going to turn off the symmetry. Symmetric, I'll turn that off, and I'll just draw a little line going up here, all right? And then anything below this first point will not be modified, and when I use my move key, and this is an interesting thing about Modo, you can place this move locator wherever you like. And I'm just kind of tightening down that tumble home. Notice that all this stayed intact. I didn't break any kind of continuity or tangencies or anything like that. But I've got a very dynamic looking, a much more kind of like the JR train line in Tokyo, kind of cool that way. Or I can right mouse click Sorry, let's move it back a little bit so we can adjust the tumble home, kind of give it a little more of a forehead, looking at this in a left view here. So this little fall off is very powerful. I'm basically locking down all this. Also, you can select polygons and lock them down so that they're not modified, and that is under select, and you can lock, geometry. You can lock your your polygon faces. So hitting J will lock your polygons, and then hitting I will unlock your polygons that you lock down. All right, so we're getting close to the end of this particular asset, and I'll kind of scroll down here, and we can kind of see this in its final state as we're kind of getting down to the bottom of the hour here. So here's the final sculpt, and I'll just throw some wheels here on top of that. So I'll just shift select, bring those wheels into the fold, and I'll just kind of shift select all these here. So now I've created some wheels using some radial sweeps or radial arrays. They're a lot of fun to make, and so looking at this shape and trying to be inspired by this sketch that Jason gave us. I think we kind of captured his sketch fairly well. So I'll just pop over to the sketch real quick. So, in a short amount of time, we're able to use this box modeling mode, bevel, extrude, soften, edge weighting, and I think we pretty much captured this sketch. And of course, who says it's finished, right? The concrete's not settled, and we can go back in quickly and make some changes. All right. So with that being said, let's talk a little bit more about something like this, a little more pragmatic, more of a current form factor, a little more restricted, and let's pop back over into Modo and show the kind of a workflow for something like that. I'll go ahead and close this scene, and that's Control W. Close this scene. Oh, by the way, let me just sorry, I need to show this. So I just popped out a few images of that final concept, so we'll just kind of show you what that looks like, and these are from inside of Modo. Just toggled on the ray tracing, GL. This isn't a final. This is kind of like your interactive preview. Just did a couple of screen grabs. I could do some paint overs for details, or you can actually paint inside of Modo on the 3D model. Just select the surface, say make a UV map, and then start sculpting, or painting right on the surface. So 3D painting right on the surface, which just got to make a UV for it. So that's a lot of fun. So let me make one more. I have one more image there. Once I got that, we can get buy-off on direction. And the fun thing is that you can use those rigs, the fall-offs, to sculpt while it's ray tracing. So you can sculpt in a ray tracing view and watch highlights get corrected or add details as needed, add edge weighting and that sort of thing. And then, of course, you could take it off to like Mesh Fusion to start doing part lines and interactive parting lines. All right, let's pop back over to Modo. So the next thing I want to mention here, so we started with some speed forms. We showed you how to do some inspirational speed forms, then sculpting more based on a box modeling. And but now we want to use more of a traditional modeling, form factor. So I'm going to say open here, and I'll load the. We'll use this this file here. So took a couple orthographic sketches and load this file. So this is pretty traditional kind of a workflow where you have some sketches, orthographic views. Sometimes you put a rear end with a front end sketch, and I've seen it done in a couple ways. Just a little note for those that are just getting started in Modo. If you hit your O key, the letter O brings up this little viewport controller. If this is something that bugs you, it did me, so I figured it out, actually with Andy's help. Overlay drawing, so now I can kind of see through the sketch. Okay, now I can see everything. And to get a sketch into Modo, you just kind of drag from your desktop into the scene, and you say, make it a top view, make it a side view. It's pretty slick that way. So here's all my sketches, side view, top view, and you can define what axes that your sketches are on. So I brought those all in, and I used PNGs because they had the alpha channels already with it. All right, the next thing we did was to again, using a pretty conservative, I'll say pretty conservative sketch, you know, very realistic proportions other than the wheels, I think you would probably agree. And started creating a workable model. So just again, typically in a real studio, you get some carryover side glass or front windscreen that is carryover. And usually those are either built off of a portion of a cylinder that has a specific arc on it, or it might be a compound surface where you have curvature in two directions. Just want to point out if that is the case. So this is actually a portion of a giant cylinder that's been trimmed out, and we could do some sort of you know, that little thing I did earlier where we used the fall-offs. That's something we can do here just to establish side glass feasibility if it's something that you really want to do. So I could say cylindrical, or I could snap a realistic. I could snap a realistic arc there, and we can match that, or bring in a real curve from another, bring it in from your CAD package. And then I'm going to go ahead and say, let's go ahead and move this, and just kind of slide the whole thing outwards. And let's move the turn off symmetry here real quick. So right now my glass, my deformer is, what axes am I using here? You gotta pay attention to that. So you can curve your glass and make sure that it's compound or just a regular cylindrical shape, just to keep that in mind. So starting with something that's feasible, the side glass, that's how we kind of started all the forms that you're about to see. The next thing we did is extrapolated some key curves from the, created some curves using the sketching out curves here. So under Bezier curve or sketch, you could, we created some curves here on screen to kind of capture that more of a Bezier style. And this one here, Bezier is the one I kind of like here because I can use the control key and break those if I need to, but very Illustrator style, creating those curves, move them around and tweak them a little bit, grab the edges, and get the lines exactly where I want. But those would be planar curves, right? The nice thing that we can do is take those curves and smash them up against that cylinder. So I thought this was pretty cool about what Moto can bring to the table. So we've got two objects selected, so we've got these two selected, and I'm going to manipulate this curve here. I'll switch over to curve mode. I'll turn this off here. So I want that to actually hit up against the side glass reference. So I'm going to turn off this so we can actually see. And when I move this, and I'll say mesh constraints, I'll say background. So it's going to use the thing that's in the background, and when I move that curve, let's go ahead and move the curve, it's up against that piece of the geometry. It doesn't want to leave that piece of surface right there. It's actually conformed to that that cylindrical shape. So my glass is somewhat feasible when I smash it up against there to start defining my DLO and the belt line of the model. All right, moving on here, we'll toggle these off and kind of show you the next stage. Developing some wheel wells based on the sketch. That's pretty typical. Some cylinders, deleted the bottoms, and then used the pen tool to come around here so Polygon, using the pen tool, and traced out basically the center line of the shape. Right? So just to trace that all the way around, and then did I can do an extrude basically, extend that edge all the way out, hitting the Z key, and then doing I'll toggle this off here so you can see the cage mode. So I got that shape and then did a quick edge along this edge. So here's something that's just like really powerful about Moto's tools here. If I use, we'll continue here. I'll pop it through the next steps here. So basically I created a bridge. I bridged this surface to match that curve. So I snapped my verts to my control curve that matched the sketch in a couple of views. And I just bridged in between a couple of shapes here along the way. Did the same thing in the back here, just did a bridge and did some edge loops in the back. Started to close out the volume here. And again, it's not very complicated at this point. Just trying to close the volume, make it a little bit watertight. So clicking through here, nothing really magical yet, but just kind of keeping your eye on where things are at. Again, popping and looking in different views, using your T key to kind of move things aligned, getting them to flow, using the letter T, and it constrains it to that nice work plane that's in the background, or that little light gray window. When I move, you can see it constrains it to whatever view I cycle to, so which is really helpful. Moving along here, we added a few edge loops at the center. Added another edge loop along this trip rail or roof rail, and then just a softened toggle view here, so I can shift tab to kind of see the cage mode and the sub-D surface. All right, so moving through that, and then trying to capture like what was happening in this sketch. So at first I thought, okay, maybe that's a big cutout. Andy and I kind of went back and forth there. We thought it maybe was a big feature line, but even at this point, it's a discussable model, right? We can start to show and discuss this. So here's a star. There's a couple of shapes on here that I want to mention that you want to keep an eye on. So just keep this in mind. So these corners, turning a corner is one of the interesting things in poly modeling. This five-sided surface, turning a corner. Also this one here, being able to create like a spear shape, and I'll bring that up. So here's one right here. This is like one of these shapes. So that one, the star point, how to create these, and turning a corner. Those are like 3 of the 4 major things you need to know how to do to create a polygon model. And after that, you can pretty much button up a model. Edge weighting along the edges here. So I'll go ahead and select this, holding Shift and adding the selection there, and you can use the up arrow here, and I can hit Shift W to start controlling the edge weighting along that edge there. So if I want a little harder, more masculine form there, or something to catch a light, I can do that. Moving on, again, just massaging the side, tweaking the side, adding edge loops along the way, still checking our sketches here, making sure that we're staying kind of in compliance here. All right, that's key. So just always referring back to what the design input is. And up around the front here, splitting and adding edge loops. Here's another 4-sided shape. I call them the spear. Here's another spear. So adding edge weighting along this edge here. You don't always have to keep 4-sided, but I just find that it makes a nice, when you hand off, when you start to make NURB surfaces from it, it makes really clean patch structure. So this one, adding some more detail in the lower fascia. And let's pop on over here. So mirroring the model. So this is what I find very awesome about, once we get to this shape, and we've gotten some input from the design manager, or studio manager, and he's saying, all right, let's do this and this with it. So I'll just kind of show it in a little more of a completed state. I'll turn this on as well. Turn these all on, and looking at the shapes here, also I'll just say, hey, why don't you go ahead and just do a fast little view of this model. Sorry, I'll leave this back on here and go to full shiny here, so it shows well online. Well, yeah, I've got these turned off. Sorry about that. So let's make sure all of these are selected. There we go. So once we see the model like this, and I can hit Control-1, I can kind of look at this whole thing and start to get a good view of what's happening with the highlights relatively quickly. And then inevitably, there's changes, and that's what's awesome about Moto, is that you can make those changes right away. Let's pop to a side view here, and something that I found very cool is that you can cut sections in Moto. We'll turn this all off. I can cut sections through this model by using the contour. Excuse me. I can cut slices, contour slicing through the model and hand up sections. So here's some cross sections of the model, so I can say, oh, actually these cross sections are the ones I want to try and match, because we've got some input here. Now I need to kind of get this to be a little more realistic to match these criteria curves. So when I go back to the, I'll turn off the final model, turn off my mirrors, And I'll go back to my kind of earlier state of the model. Turn off all these wheels. And there's my criteria. And my model here is I want to make it morph it to that. Again, fall-offs, very helpful. So I'll pop over to wireframe. I can see this whole thing. I'm going to make sure I'm on polygon mode here. And I'll turn on symmetry and say fall-off, linear. And I'll just kind of grab this front, move this. And I've been told that the front end needs to grow because we cheated the package a little bit. Imagine that. And we're just going to move this front end out a little bit. And I'm not breaking any continuity. Let's see. So yeah, I'm going to move this out just a little bit. Okay, almost 50 mils. That's a lot in the car world. And I'll drop that selection. And then same thing with this greenhouse. Let's go ahead and make another fall off here, linear, and grow this up because the heads are poking through the roof line here. So let's go ahead and grow it up a little bit, and maybe even shift it forward a little bit because we're a little not fast enough on the windscreen. Maybe we did a little testing and sent this off to be milled or ran through the wind tunnel. And by the way, you can send this off to the wind tunnel because it's a watertight mesh that can either be milled, grown, or visualized very quickly, again, to have some immediate feedback and a very discussable model. The last thing I want to show you that it just kind of blew me away was the retopology tools inside of MODO. And what do I mean by retopology? Well, to be able to take in some existing reality capture, either point cloud data, somehow you got some scan, and so I'll go ahead and bring in this front fascia of this model, and this is just kind of a lower piece of scan data. Here's actually the part that I finished doing, but let me just kind of show you how I got here. And it'll highlight, it'll mill, and it'll render, and I can do multiple ones of these and have them and show different variations of this relatively quickly. So how do you do something like this? So I'm going to toggle this off and bring up the scan. So here's the scan data. For any of you that are on the phone or on the call, excuse me, you might have seen something like this. And let me just show you some quick tools that allow you to generate, recapture this when you need to. So N for a new layer, and I'm going to use that scan here. I'm just going to bring this up here just so these make sense. And I'm going to go to retopology mode. So Control and Tab, and I'll switch over to retopology mode here. So I'm on this new mesh. This thing is in my background, and anything I do with creating geometry will stick right to the surface. So check this out. I'm using the pen tool, and I'm just going to click like in a clockwise fashion. So I'll click. Oh, I've got symmetry turned on. Let's turn that off real quick. So that was a little bit of a false start. Try that again. So symmetry is turned off, and I'm going to use my pen tool, and I'll just click 4 points kind of in a clockwise fashion. And now that I've done that, I'm going to use my hotkey that I've defined and just start growing, holding the Shift key. Let's zoom in here a little bit. I can use the Shift key and just start growing shapes here. What I mean by shapes is growing some topology that I'm trying to capture the detail around this lower front fascia. By the way, just a little note in the polygon modeling, try to capture the details first, surround the details first, and then do the filling around the other volume. So right here, I'm just trying to capture this detail. But you can see that this is sticking right to the surface. And again, using the topo pen, I'm just holding Shift key and dragging, and I'm capturing this thing. And I'm just going to, excuse me, use the left mouse click and just drag this. And I'll drag another one here. And I'm not too worried about how precise it is yet, because I'll get into that. But right now, I'm just trying to, I'm not holding any clutch keys on the keyboard, but quickly I can capture this scan. I'll toggle on something that's shiny so we can see what's going on with the surface. My mesh, I should say, to turn on my shiny. Oh, I got to switch to the other mode here, but I'm just looking at that model right now in a kind of a evaluation. This is the default topology mode, and I know we're kind of getting close to the top of the hour here, but I just want to show you, again, using retopo pen, I can shift and just click and drag, excuse me, shift and right mouse click drag up a whole row of geometry, and shift click again on this edge. Excuse me, I'll just take this edge up. I think I did that twice there because I get excited. I love this stuff. All right, so I'm just going to drag this up, and then I'll right mouse click and drag just this edge up, and it tries to snap itself. As you can see, it kind of does this awesome stuff, and then I'll use Topology tweak, just like we were in the modeling mode, and drag the shapes around a little bit to start to achieve the contour that I'm looking for. So being able to use the topo pen, topo tweak, and grow these shapes out that quickly and have it stick right on the surface is pretty cool. Another one I just thought was not, it's kind of it's like a circus freak show, but it's just not, I have to show it. It's called Topology Sketch, and I can define the width of the polygon and then just click and drag a shape. It sticks to the surface. I can adjust the segments on the fly, and it's just too cool not to show. But I can quickly kind of get shapes drawn in and closed out if I need to. Of course, using all the fall off tools, all apply to all this. So I know we're getting close to the top of the hour, but I just want to show you that this retopology tools inside of Modo are just lightning fast when compared to doing a traditional surfacing of reverse engineering. So I'll just pop back over here and back to my my topo mesh here, and I'm going to stop right there because I know we're getting close to our time, but hopefully I'll wrap it right there, and there's so much more to come, and I know we're going to be doing some more webinars around this automotive workflow.
Great, Kevin. Thank you for your joyful presentation as it has been described by the viewer.
That's awesome.
Did you ever get that before, the compliment?
It's possible. It's possible.
So we have a couple of questions.
Okay, fire away.
First of all, how are you changing the material in the viewport?
How am I changing material in the viewport? Let's see. So the viewport, this here is this is called Bling. It's one of the, if you go to the user community, you can find Bling on the Moto user community, and just switch your materials that way, or you can go to the traditional shading modes and toggle on full ray tracing if you want to.
Okay. And you've been using a mouse this whole time, right? Somebody was asking if you were using a mouse or pen tablet.
I've actually been just using maybe my penmanship is so bad, but I've been using a tablet the whole time.
Okay.
An Intuos.
Okay.
And I've assigned my buttons on my Intuos tablet to, excuse me, my buttons on my stylus to be middle and right mouse button, so I can grow the shapes easily that way.
There you go. Okay, and how accurate is Modo in regards to scaling? How would you measure these parts if you needed to measure these organic shapes?
Yeah, so that's a kind of a great question. One is anybody that's done any reverse engineering, you can kind of see when the polygons start to overlay this scan. And also, if you want to be very technical about it, you could cut sections and send them over to line up with the CAD package. But again, the presentation, just to kind of frame the presentation, not talking about Class A, or not talking about data management or stock surfacing. It's mostly about conceptual modeling. But most of the studios I've been in, if I got a surface this quick and then we milled it out over the armature and clay that already exists, we would have pretty good feedback, and then we can get down to the reverse engine, full-blown reverse engineering. But I can tell my polygons when they start to kind of do like Z-fighting or the interfacing with the polygons of the scan, that I know I'm pretty close to within tolerance. Also, I will shade my scan data, my STL file, different than my retopo surface, so that I can kind of see where they're fighting, and I can kind of tell that they have laminar polys there, which means I'm within tolerance.
Cool.
Good enough for my students.
Cool. Would it be possible to get a copy of the wireframe, H-point character, and wheels, or is it a licensed copyright property?
That should not be a problem. We can definitely post that. That was all homegrown, and we can definitely share that. No problem. We'd love to.
Okay, and then somebody was asking if there are many users using MODO for jewelry design. I don't know if you have experience of this, if you know somebody or.
That's a great question for someone who knows a little more about jewelry. I do know on the Moto website that there's quite a bit of jewelry that's being displayed, and there's quite a community there. If you go to the forums and type in Moto Jewelry Design, I'm sure there will be some open arms ready to welcome you on using Moto for jewelry design.
Super. Um, Somebody wants to know um, what are the features that are comparative to Rhino in MODO for creating Gothic architecture, if you know.
Wow. So, wow, Gothic. I like the question to be a little more specific, please.
Yes.
Actually, let me just close this scene real quick. And this is where I start to get into the weeds of where things get a little interesting. So this should be fun. So the question is, can you use Moto to do architecture? You sure can. There's actually a bunch of predefined shapes that you can use to create. Let's get out of here. So I'm using a rendering mode here. Hang on a second. Yes, there's you can create sections like a router's edge, what the molding should be, and predefined volumes that you can drop into the scene. And actually, there's a couple of videos on YouTube that show a lot more architecture based modeling with Moto. Let's see if we can find that. But continue. Next question.
Yes, and also I wanted to remind everybody that we're going to have a webinar on MODO for architectural visualization in about a month or less, so stay tuned. Well, maybe that presenter might be able to answer the question more specifically. And also, the same person that asked about the H-point character wanted to know
Yes.
where, where it'll be shared for download.
I think I'm guessing that Andy will probably share it in the forums. Andy Brown will share it in the forums.
Okay.
I'll give it to Andy to share.
Okay, great. And so somebody was using Rhino and it's using it for the shape rails features. Is there something comparable in Moto? That's what he kind of wants to.
I have to tell you, and I would just tell you right straight up. My main focus over the last 60 days has primarily been poly and sub-D surfacing, and I haven't used any kind of NURBS curves or any kind of lofting or that sort of thing. But there are bridging functionality. If there's specific questions like about trying to attack a certain project that you might have, please forward it to us, and my email. Oh, I don't know if I should do this, but I guess I can.
You can.
Yeah,
I mean, if you want to.
Yeah, sure. It's kevin.ketchum@thefoundry.co.uk. So its last name is Ketchum. It's sort of like ketchup with an M. So kevin.ketchum@thefoundry.co.uk. And specific examples or details of a lot of these, like architecture and jewelry design and Rhino functions, I will get with our Moto experts, our global Moto experts, and I'm sure that these guys, we can return and report with something that will answer the questions. And if we don't know, well, we'll let you know we don't know.
That's very nice of you, Kevin. And also throughout the webinar, you got great feedback. So you should be very proud of this presentation. Everybody's very excited. People that are new to MODO, even people that have been using MODO and discovering new things about it that they didn't know. So this is great. This is it for the question. I'm looking at great, wow, great models right now. Thank you for the show. And I'm afraid I will have to switch screen, unfortunately.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
No, thank you. And I would like to thank everybody for attending. And I want to remind everybody who wants to get MODO that, to visit and look for Modo 901 because Novage is the best way to buy design software online. And for information on the latest specials and new releases, join the Novage network on Facebook, Google+, or Twitter. And subscribe to the Novage blog and our YouTube and Vimeo channels where the webinar today will be posted, the whole entire recording. So if you came late or if you have to leave early, you'll find it. And don't forget the next week's webinar is about Fusion 360. Your CAD tool doesn't have to get in the way of great product design. And thank you all for joining us today. And thank you so much to Kevin and his great presentation. Thank you again,
Thanks,
Kevin.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
All right, we'll see you soon. Bye-bye. Thank you.